Hello, this is Wenker Reviews, and today I'll be doing a video on It Chapter 2, starring Bill Skarsgård and James McAvoy, about a group of friends who finally meet up after 27 years at their old childhood hometown to finally defeat Pennywise. I just want to say right off the bat that I really enjoyed this a lot more than part 1. I thought one of the most impressive things about the movie was the adult actors. They look so much like the child actors. Jay Ryan, who plays the adult Ben Hanscom, actually has the same bone structure as the child actor, played by Jeremy Taylor. And that was just very fascinating to me. The opening of this movie is actually a lot better than Chapter 1, in my opinion. I thought it had better build-up. I thought it had better tension. I thought Pennywise looked a lot better. It wasn't a perfect scene, but it was a huge improvement. Pennywise is actually creepier in this movie. For the majority of the movie, he's not that scary, but there were a couple of scenes where I was generally creeped out. Whereas in the first movie, he didn't scare me at all, and I didn't really like Bill Skarsgård's performance. But again, there were a couple of scenes that did generally creep me out, and I think that had to do with the writing. There's also one scene where you see Bill Skarsgård without any makeup on. You see him in plain face, and then you see the outcome of that, and it's actually very startling, and I wish there were more scenes like that. There's also a scene involving an old lady that you can see in the trailer, and that scene was actually kind of disappointing. Like, it has a great build-up, it's super creepy, it's super zany, and I was just like on the edge of my seat during that scene, and then the outcome of that was actually very cheesy. It was very corny, and that's just an example of how it's better for the audience to use their imagination and not to show so much in full force and actually have things more implied and have more darkness and not just show everything that there is to show, because then it just looks cheesy. And that's just one of the major problems that I have with this movie. Sometimes you see Pennywise, in full costume, full makeup, in broad daylight, and it's not scary at all. And it's not just that, but it's also Bill's performance. It's not scary. It's like bad acting. And I think, once again, that has to go back to the writing. Like, the writing actually is very good at some points, and then at other points it just falls flat and it's very over the top. And I think some scenes where Bill doesn't do a good job portraying Pennywise, I think those scenes have to have ad-libbing. And the scenes where he does do a good job, it's where the writers actually took time to write out a scene and write out a script and tell him what to say and how to say it. Another thing that I really liked was Mike, the adult version of Mike, played by Aisha Mustafa. The thing that I really loved about Mike in this movie is that he has more to do. He actually plays a very significant role in the ending, which I won't give away, but his character actually has importance to the story. He has weight to the story. And whereas in the first movie, he was basically just a token black guy, like the child actor was basically just a token, and he had really no reason to be there, and I'm just really happy that they gave him something to do, and they gave him such an important role in the movie. As for positives, that's where the positives kind of end with the movie for me. Now, my first complaint is that the movie feels very rushed, specifically the parts where we're first introduced to the adult version of the Losers Club. Now, we're introduced to them very quickly, and it's as if the movie just wants to hurry up and get them to Derry so all the scary stuff can start happening, which really annoyed me because the book actually does a very good job at fleshing out all the characters, giving everyone a proper introduction 27 years later and where they are in their life. And that's a huge problem with the movie, is that we're not given time to know these characters as individuals, as adults. And I know you can't fit every single thing from the book into the movie, but this movie is almost 3 hours long, and they definitely could have spent more time developing the characters before taking them to Derry. Specifically, Beverly Marsh. In the book, she has an abusive husband, and I'm not going to go into full detail about what happens, but she gets into an argument or into a fight with her abusive husband. And in the book, it's very emotional. It's very tragic. It's very heart pumping. But in the movie, it's super rushed. It's like boom, boom, boom. And then when she gets into a fight with her husband, she gets into a physical fight. It doesn't look like a real fight. It looks like a fight that was rehearsed. Like step by step rehearsed, almost like dancing. Instead of being spontaneous and looking like a real fight and looking like Beverly is in actual danger. But she doesn't look like she's in actual danger. It looks like a staged fight. There's no emotion behind it because it's so rushed. Another issue that I had, it's kind of a spoiler, so I won't give away who this happens to in case you haven't read the book, but there's a character in this movie that commits suicide, and that, like, the scene, it was so emotionless. Like, it was so rushed. It was by the numbers. There was no tension at all. And in the book, this is like one of the first things to happen in the book. And it involves a family member as well. The family member discovers the body of their loved one. And in the book, there's like a lot of tension. There's a lot of heart-pumping moments. There's like, you can feel the characters' fear, like them panicking. You can feel like the panic while reading the book and the emotion that's involved when they're trying to save their family member and then they discover that their family member did this to themselves in their own home. And in the movie, it's like none of that emotion is in there. It's just by the numbers. It's rushed. There's no impact whatsoever. It's just something that happens. And I was actually very afraid that something like that would happen and that it wouldn't translate well in the movie, and it was just a huge disappointment. Another major problem that I had was Richie and Eddie. I know a lot of people are praising Bill Hader for his role in this, but I actually disliked him a lot. I thought he was too funny. I did not like his humor at all. There were a few scenes where his humor did work, but there were too many times where he was cracking jokes during scenes that were supposed to be scary or tense in some way. And the tension would disappear completely because he keeps cracking jokes every 5 freaking minutes. And it was so annoying. Like, this is supposed to be a scary movie. I thought I came to watch this movie to be scared or uncomfortable in a good way. I didn't come here to watch a parody or a comedy. And speaking of bad comedy, my issue is also with the actor that plays Eddie. I thought the character Eddie was also way too funny. There were scenes where him and Richie were playing off each other during scenes that weren't supposed to be that scary, and I did think those parts were good. But then again, there were scenes that were supposed to be tense. Like, there's one scene between Eddie and Henry Bowers. I won't spoil that scene, but it was supposed to be like, it could have been such an intense movie. It could have been such an intense movie scene. And it came out of nowhere, and it was just so disappointing. Because this scene was supposed to be super scary between him and Henry, and he's too busy cracking jokes during a scene that's supposed to be scary and intense. And it just sucked the life out of the scene. And it was so frustrating. Like, really? Like, I can't give away what happens exactly in the scene, but I was thinking, like, really, you're cracking jokes while this is happening? Like, are you freaking serious? Like, it was just really irritating. And speaking of Henry Bowers, adult actor that plays Henry Bowers, his name is Teach Grant, and I thought his performance was way too over the top. And again, I think that goes back to writing and direction, because I also thought the child actor that played Henry Bowers, Nicholas Hamilton, I thought his performance was super over the top, and it was just really bad acting. I thought the character himself, Henry Bowers, was very underdeveloped. in both part 1 and part 2. I thought it was very rushed. And going back to how rushed this movie is, because it's like they're trying to cram as much as they can from the book into the movie, and it's just not working because everything feels so rushed and there's no emotion behind anything that's happening. Like there's very little impact. Another issue that I had, a small issue that I had, was the fact that they took scenes straight from the book that didn't really need to be in the movie. For example, there's this one scene involving a giant statue chasing one of the characters in the middle of the street. And in the book, that scene would work in the book because you can just use your imagination, but it doesn't translate well in an R-rated movie. It actually looks very cheesy. Also, there's one scene involving Bill and talking to a little boy that's straight from the book. And the dialogue in the book actually makes more sense than in the movie. I don't know why they changed the dialogue, but in the book, Bill tells a little kid that he meets in the street that the little boy should be careful about the drains and the voices that he may or may not hear in the sewers, and he just tells the boy to be careful and not to go anywhere alone. But in the movie, and don't worry, this isn't a spoiler, but in the movie, he tells the boy in a really panicky tone to like go back home and tell his parents to pack up and move as far away as possible. Like, how is a little kid, like that scene didn't make any sense to me, because how is a little kid supposed to tell his parents to pack up and like move to a different place altogether, all because some man told him to do so? Like, no parent would actually pack their things up and move to a different state because their child wants them to. Like, that dialogue didn't make sense to me at all. And one other problem that I have with this movie is that it's almost 3 hours long, and I knew that before going in, and I don't mind watching really long movies. I'm used to watching movies that are well over 2 hours, but because everything is so rushed and everything is so underdeveloped, it does feel so much longer than it needs to be. Like, if you're not going to flesh out scenes properly and flesh out characters properly, then you need to make the movie a lot shorter in length. But despite having so many negative things to say, once again, I really did love this movie a lot more than the first one. I thought it was a huge improvement. I actually can't wait to watch it again, despite all its flaws and despite all its lost potential, because there were a few scenes, especially involving Pennywise and a couple of children that he comes across. Those scenes were very creepy to me. There are some very standout scenes to me, and that's why I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And I would recommend it. Thanks for watching.